okay, because it's education, training, employment, charities, and then there's transport. What we could do, right? We could hold pub quizzes to raise money for accessible consultancy buses.
That's it. This job is too much for one spot. I'm going back to Dublin to get more soldiers.
Okay, my name is Donald Sullivan and I'm going to be your facilitator for the afternoon. After what we went through this morning, which is really a process of trying to identify where it is your groups and organisations are coming from within Ballymun, and what your understanding of disability as an issue is, and how you might move that forward generally, but also specifically with the establishment of the BADIG as a concept and as a group, as an entity within your area now. How are you going to, I hate using this term, interface with that? And but essentially, what we want for the Engines today to happen as we go into the process of a plan of action, what we want to happen is that you're going away with an idea that the BADIG exists, and you know the personalities and some of the people involved with it. But more importantly, that you can, in this part of the afternoon, establish how that might take place, how you might establish a relationship over a period of time that we can evaluate and measure before progressing further. Because these are very early days for progressing disability in Ireland. I mean, if you draw from that sketch earlier on, that is not terribly far, in fact, from the reality. I mean, that is the level, and I think you'll have found in terms of some of the questions you may have been finding yourself asking in your workshops this morning, that's quite near the level of people's experience of disability as people, and surprisingly for people who are working in an area quite often around inclusion and equality, when you sit back and stop and think, hang on, what do we know about this? So let's try and find out what you did establish, in terms of some of the areas or issues where problems might exist for your organisation in coming to understand the issue of disability.
Our group, barriers to inclusion, really when you list them here, they're all listed down here, but the big emphasis of our group in barriers to inclusion was the whole idea of not being comfortable with a person with a disability and not feeling at ease. Like the individuals in the group were saying, I don't feel really comfortable talking to somebody with a disability, and I met them coming into the office, he'd be saying, like, do I open the door for that person, or do I not open the door for that person? Do you know what I mean? And very much the individual's lack of security in dealing with a person with a disability. And that was the overriding emphasis of the group, So we have a lack of understanding of the disabilities, not knowing how to communicate, feeling really edgy about communicating with a person with a disability, the whole thing about being patronising, feeling am I being patronising this person or am I treating this person as an equal. The whole idea then of the huge barrier we felt was that people were invisible, that people with disabilities were invisible in the communities, not being consulted, that decisions were made without asking people with disabilities their opinion.
Well, there was a very lot of very important points raised in our group, but at the end we tried to summarise it down to 5 or 6. And it all boiled down to building awareness into training and education programmes, and doing audit of needs through BADIG for people living with disability in the rural area, access to all services which are available to everyone else in the community, training in communication, consultation with BADIG when organising things for people with disabilities, integration of people with disabilities in all education, employment and training programmes, transport. There's a very big issue for people with disabilities because they have to be able to get from A to B, and also employment, to to have an employment focus, employing people with disabilities to do the same jobs that we can do. The 3 key points we came up with was access, awareness and training. And access was into buildings, difficulties people have that have disabilities, like public toilets, into flats that have organisations up on the top they can't get up. And training. Some areas in Ballymun, people with disability have no access because they can't get in to do the training. Awareness is to be aware of disability in the area, of the people with disabilities, to see the person and not the disability for each person, and to change our attitudes towards people with disabilities and to welcome them into our organisation as a person. Training is for training to be done in each organisation to make awareness training for disability, for the key workers and management, so that they can also be involved in the community.
In an area that's in some way not dissimilar to Ballymun in terms of rates of unemployment, etc. But I can live in Pear Street because I can push from Pear Street into town to all the sorts of different places like that. If I wanted to live in Ballymun, I'd have to buy a car. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't get there. I'd have to stay living in Ballymun and not live anywhere else. I wouldn't move anywhere else. So the sense of physical isolation I would experience within the area, and that's as you kind of observed in your discussions about some of those things about do I open the door, what's that like to feel that isolated in a community around asserting what your needs are? Because sometimes you find, whether it's to do with disabilities or other areas where people have felt they've been denied their rights, etc. for years, people try to be quite passive and nice about things. They think, if I'm a good boy, I'll get what I want. And actually that doesn't happen. But people learn to be good and nice and go terribly softly in order to get very basic needs met. And unfortunately, I don't know that gets you to a stage where you can actually assert or articulate what it is your experience. And if within your groups, you don't even have disabled people coming forward, getting involved in a network, getting involved in any kind of activity, that again suggests that there's a lot of isolated disabled people within Ballymun. They're not getting involved.
To, I suppose, remind us, help us reflect how you can help BADIG make change within the community. So I'd say 2 things: taking our own responsibility, and we are going forward, and also looking at assisting BADIG in the work that they're doing. Okay. So if those of you are involved in specific agencies who, like Derek?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, today, it's been a mind blower just to take on board all the different things that have come up by way of reflecting on them. And then, as you said, it's one thing being idealistic. The next thing is to look at it and really see something that's achievable, small that it may be, but something that would really just begin to, mark an era of access with disabilities. I mean, I myself would, one of the ways probably Tony said he'd come by way and to check out to see was our offices structurally wheelchair friendly by way of different things like that. That was one thing as well. Another thing, I mean, basically would be maybe with the deaf to put in place some sort of learn sign language. But in thinking of that, I would like even a bigger package, some sort of an awareness package. I'd even be looking at I can't say this, but I would like even look at the idea of someone who's disabled coming into the partnership, either by way of mentoring us in relation to looking at the needs of the disabled, either helping us in the consultative process that way, or dealing with it themselves, I can't make that decision, but I would like to see that. I can see the benefits of that.
Barriers facing people with disabilities, but it came from people working in organisations and how they, as the service providers, saw the barriers as opposed to us identifying them. And your managing director was in this workshop today, so it's very timely again. And this afternoon, what we're doing is we're looking at all the different agencies, organisations that are represented, and looking at each organisation, pinning down 3 realistic or achievable actions that can be measurable over 6 to 8 months. So that, now I don't know if any of you are aware that we will come back, all of us here, plus maybe more, and look at the outcomes of them through the document and what we agreed would be the actions, so that we can measure them and say, okay, this is what you want to do, it worked, it's fantastic, it didn't work, so what other supports do you need to ensure that that happens?
Sean's asked me to take on board the disability brief in relation to our section, so.
Is any of the other organisations on too?
Well, there were some very interesting points that came up this morning. In order to move the debate into into the actions, if you like, identifying what actions might be taken, I think it's important for me to go back to some of the stuff that was highlighted this morning. Because I know that Kieran Murray particularly talked about an audit of people with disability within the Ballymun area in terms of the regeneration and the redesign of Ballymun and what needs to happen around that. So in that regard, I would be proposing, probably as an action, that with the BRL, that BADIG and other groups might sit down with BRL to assess the questionnaire or the survey that's actually going on, to see whether it actually is the language that's required to get the information that's necessary. More importantly, is to kind of to attempt to find out then where what actually happens with this information and where this information goes, and what is the end result of the information. Is it for a definite plan to come up with an action plan for the rebuild of Ballymun, if that makes sense? Now, that would be an action that I would like to see coming out of here today.
Any time there would be a call for assistance, it's given, and people would get there as fast as possible. And we do the strangest things, let's say, not even talking about disabilities, but people have been locked out of houses and breaking in for them and doing all those sort of things. The guards are asked to break into cars and into houses and all sort of strange things. But I think nobody could ever say that we have refused, or I don't think in any cases we would. But I take the point of awareness training. I think it would be a great idea, and I'm sure our local superintendent would be very pleased if you were prepared to come in with it.
Some means maybe bringing people together more in the community, not segregating them, not having different clubs specifically for people with mental disabilities, not inviting them to Christmas dinners specifically as a group of mental people. Maybe something like that I might be able to, I'll think about it, or some way to suggest to them through BADIG maybe, I don't know, with the help of the BADIG. But also I'd just like to say that the regeneration is mentioned a lot when we're talking about disability. And the regeneration, as I see it now, is a very structured thing involving building. But to me, regeneration is more like a rebirth and a re-coming together of us all in Ballymun, and not specifically a rebuilding of buildings. And as far as I'm aware, in the last 9 months, I have not heard that attitude from the company that's overseeing it. All I'm hearing is houses, houses, houses. Yeah. So maybe we could suggest to them that there's more to life than getting house.
Yeah, and other people look at the way it's done proper, and they probably do that when they save money. It's not all about to save with people. It's about access, that's it, you know, for everyone. You know, equal opportunities across the board. That's all you ask for. And a chance. That's all. And the people from the organisations today, I heard some good things coming from them, and I'm assuming they learned a few lessons today as well.
Make a suggestion on ways going forward that you can use BADIG, which is the Disability Interest Group, and other agencies like the IWA or myself or any other organisation that can ensure that it isn't just housing and housing and housing, that it incorporates everything.
Kathleen Maher told me I could relax. That I just came along to listen. You told me to relax. You see, I wouldn't have to talk. But no,
remember that on the phone or
on this,
I was yesterday.
I recorded you.
I was yesterday.
No, but seriously though, the Ballymun regeneration has to be more than the building. Somebody was making that point. You made that point, and that's well taken. I mean, in terms of the deadlines they had to meet to make submissions under the IAP program, they had to get the submission on buildings in and general infrastructure in before, I think it was the end of March or something like that, and so there wasn't time for anything else, and the focus has been entirely, you're quite right, on buildings.